The poem has nothing to do with Amsterdam, but we were kind of invited nebulously to contribute to this thing. So I collected some bits and pieces that kind of vaguely relate to the idea of water, given the number of canals in the city and that kind of thing, and that's the only connect I really have. Anyway, this is something of a love song to two bars in San Francisco that no longer exist, but I was fortunate enough to drink in these places a couple of months before they closed down. So anyway, this is a poem called Pink Roses After the Geary Club and the Edinburgh Castle. As I walk to the bay, my memories of water are multiple, and I enjoy thinking through the significance of water as some kind of model or metaphor for a consideration of the various weaknesses of all of our efforts. Better than any kind of bellwether, any impetus to work for money or for meaning, was to pass the hand slowly below a waterline, a palm's breadth below a surface, push against its gentle pressure, knowing it would push back, and ever present always, reliably and solidly. It always had a little ambition, the water, the weight of all of this water against the back of my right hand. Joan had suggested that when people spoke of a force external to themselves, which they are powerless to control, their subject was scarcely God, but social organization, but that was by implication alone. God's face is an expression of multiples, as arguments, misremembering whether her name was Joan or June, and I didn't know if that was a sentiment in or out of date, summer or an MGM ending, a lion's mouth or a gift horse. But I needed a frame of reference, and we'd given the night away to talk, and when we talked, we were often swimming. Kim Novak submerged in the San Francisco Bay, Burt Lancaster swimming in a river called Lucinda, Jane Birkin in a swimming pool, Alan Dolan by a swimming pool, Jean Seberg in the Mediterranean, Marie Laforêt near the Mediterranean, Jean Murray in a shallow bath. Every glimmer of water shines like a little psychodrama of self-interest. Here, the water is flat, but it's nighttime, so it's hard to say. And everybody wants to figure a little interruption here and there, to work on a little light and let it bounce. Willfully manipulated by forces beyond its control, interpreting the movements of that force, the measurement of an electric current like an eel, a snake, or a corner was a street's name, Geary and Hyde. That or another kind of God, and the various inflections of sun and sky on water, whilst the swimmer says that if you make believe hard enough that something is true, that it is true for you, and I can't remember who he is talking to, only that he is talking about the water, pretending it is uncontained and that it goes on and rides, and he rides under the name Lucinda, and I liked that, the ride of a name, the arc of one, and the pool becomes something loud then, not merely a frame for thought, but something wider than the arc of its own symbolic reach, a bridge for a broken bay. It becomes the scene of a series of eruptions. Characters, memories, fantasies materialize unannounced, actors defining incorporation. These things, deft, they surface, separate from the water, a means to break it, look like all they want to do is achieve something immaterial as they aim to sink, to float and to dip under, to support a train of doing words and cast them adrift. But I don't know anymore what the material things I'm looking for look like anymore, so I'm changing my name, Joan or June, and we're drinking bottled water against sound broadsheet advice and are at work on a theory of achievement together, pulling impressions of pears and trees together and fields, verdant sometimes. We're irrigated as we talk, glamour each other with talk about springs and sources, volcanic regions, looking straight ahead. I'm spreading an open palm on a cold flat surface, and I pull the phrase funny kind of childhood out of a book, and together we pool our resources. Knowing water is a useless word in here, so you order one and a chaser, and you talk straight at me. And we talk in vignettes, but only because we'd stopped listening to one another around the hour mark, with horses rendered unto a little imaginary Caesar. And the bar stays open for us, and there's a sign over the door that reads, "Be guilty when I'm gone." And we walk and talk in pink roses. An inherited phrase, it belongs to lunchtime, and knowing that a pink rose is an accidental gift, so I'm told. Someone tells me around the early afternoon mark, and we talk it through. And a yellow flower is a marker for cowardice, and I'd heard that elsewhere and before, so a pink rose had to be something else. Like watching animals gore animals by a small patch of water and falling briefly in love, or the size of a condor relative to the size of a small boy, or candle burning, or other people's mornings, or answer phones in our contemporary context, and always a myriad run of minor nothings, recounting little else but bouquets that could wrest something back from the water as they float and float and float and float and float. Reading shades of character in a restaurant menu or reflecting on a given meal, while the blue noise that bursts from your telephone looks like the big blue bloom of a broad petrel sky. And it's dark in here, so that becomes a more gracious thing than it claims to be, as though pink roses were always animals and there was another, something on the edge of extinction, but gladly so, there so as to recollect the verge and remember what it felt like to have got anywhere at all, like a free-moving thoroughbred that bounds guilelessly, the free movement of people or a swimming pool split into a million pieces, a mosaic that we'll share in and try to control with our moods. The Geary Club has some history, and that feels like a justification, and the jokes are all myriad when it comes to the traffic and trade of water, so we talk freely. Thinking in little photographs that inch by inch look like minor patches of remembered skin, a piece of a leg or some belly. I told you that I wanted to write something under the moniker Mike Mills that could platform the war of attrition between emotion and information as lazily as he does, and you talk about the distance between Greece and Athens, Georgia, and how the mud underneath us toss a bomb to the degree that it would eventually explode and compromise the structural fidelity of this room, turning it into a hairdresser's or simply the conceptual rhyme it hoped to be, another bar or another kind of rationale ripe enough to invent an indenture, a habit that could sit as a kind of stand-in for a search for something else or something more. But these were childlike stations, a shit train of thought that garlands out to nothing, illegible constellations or adverts for another drink. So we consider the roses that we've given away by accident or on purpose, by design, and how expensive the drinks will be here after the fire. And the ambition was a bunch of flowers, you'd say, people listening to their various organs, blues and reds and greens and other colors, the hunt for a pansy. But all our people were in trouble all over the map, and ambition and intention were always part of the problem. And what we wanted was the clear weather expression of something, like the colors and the stripes of the things that we would give away, in anything or in elsewhere, an electric light standing in for a candle, pointing at Sausalito or Tiburon and naming the islands as holding an automatic tenderness, stand-ins for illumination. You watch them through your window every day as evidence of endurance, and here we were trading disposable ideas and familiar clothes, talking horses, inventing flowers for other people. The room spins like a banana republic of a conceptual rhyme, and Latinate names spill all over the bar's laminate surface, big pink roses. In time, it would run out of colloquial options enough to outsource itself without needing to undress itself a little, the bar, show off some detail. This is no watering hole, but a kettle hole lake, a depression in an outwashed plain, shaped and formed by retreating glaciers, draining floodwaters, and nudity was often a catalyst, or a little season of hurricanes, and it felt good that the water was trying to stage its own little something, a protest, give over a paean to its own personality and dance itself out like a resigned and failing little revolution. It would push back simply, the water, but would do so long as there was enough of it there, push back again and again and again, as walking to the ocean or something that feels to be one. I know it will let my hand cut its own votive channel through its big and broad body. It wasn't God or a city or any idea in ascendance, just a gentle fact of forward motion. I'd walk to the water for that, the push, the return, kneeling anywhere, pushing a hand against the water, reckoning that this is no ocean but a make-believe lake. You can feel it remembering that line on the receding glacier that would have birthed it, architected its edges, if, in the imagining, there was some knowing that an ocean could grow from there, get fat on its memories, remembering moving uphill against odds just to stake a place. But today is a difficult day for the water. Today it wants to show off its limitations. I walk to the bay and I see a deep, dark, and narrow and great depression, or a wide and shallow pool of heart, an atlas of invectives, a rabbit paw, a rose, or a shark. So I'll go back and meet you there for drinks tomorrow, and together we'll pool all of our roses, pool our resources against those odds, stake a hand, and take things from there.